Changi Prison, the truth about Singapore's toughest jail. In the eastern corner of one of the world's most orderly nations sits a fortress that breaks men in ways the outside world will never understand. Changi Prison, Singapore's most notorious correctional facility, holds secrets behind its walls that would make even hardened criminals reconsider their life choices. This isn't just a prison. It's a psychological experiment in human endurance, where every meal, every minute, every breath is controlled with surgical precision. What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about incarceration. The food alone has driven inmates to madness, and the daily routine? It's designed to strip away the very essence of who you are. But there's something darker happening inside Changi that nobody talks about, a hidden hierarchy, a silent code, and punishments so severe they exist only in whispered rumors among those who've survived them. Today, you're getting the full truth about what really happens when Singapore's justice system decides your freedom is over. Before we step inside these walls, understand this: Singapore doesn't play games with crime. While other nations debate rehabilitation versus punishment, Singapore chose both, and weaponized them. Changi Prison processes over 13,000 inmates at any given time, from petty thieves to death row killers, and every single one of them follows the same brutal routine. We're going to walk through a complete day inside Changi, from the 6 a.m. wake-up bell that jolts inmates from concrete beds to the final lockdown at 10 p.m. when the real psychological warfare begins. You'll learn what's actually served on those metal trays, why the food causes more fights than gang rivalries, and how the prison uses nutrition as a control mechanism. But that's just the surface. Hidden beneath the bureaucratic efficiency is a culture inmates create themselves, codes of conduct that determine who survives and who breaks, silent hierarchies that shift with every new arrival, and methods of communication that bypass even the most advanced surveillance systems. Changi's reputation wasn't built overnight. This prison has evolved from a World War II Japanese internment camp, where thousands died, into a modern panopticon that observers call the most efficient prison in Asia. But efficiency in incarceration comes at a cost, and that cost is measured in human dignity. The facility spans over 50 acres and is divided into sectors based on security classification, offense type, and behavioral assessment. Death row inmates occupy one wing. Drug offenders, facing Singapore's mandatory death penalty for trafficking, occupy another. And then there's the general population, where the daily grind of institutional life turns years into decades in the blink of an eye. What makes Changi different from Western prisons isn't just the cleanliness or the order, it's the philosophy. Singapore believes in deterrence through discomfort, rehabilitation through regimentation, and punishment through precision. Every aspect of prison life is calibrated to remind inmates that they are not in control. Not of their time. Not of their space. And definitely not of their meals. Before we go deeper into the daily horrors of Changi's routine, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel brings you the darkest, most detailed true crime prison stories you won't find anywhere else. Don't miss what's coming next because the food situation inside Changi is worse than you can imagine. Changi Prison Complex is actually multiple facilities operating under one name, but the main institution is where the real story unfolds. The architecture itself is a weapon, designed by correctional psychologists and security experts to minimize blind spots and maximize psychological pressure. Every cell block is a self-contained unit with its own exercise yard, medical station, and dining area, ensuring inmates rarely see beyond their designated sector. The cells are small, approximately 6 feet by 10 feet, with concrete beds, a metal toilet, and a single barred window that offers a view of nothing but another concrete wall. Fluorescent lights hum constantly, flickering just enough to erode sleep quality over months and years. The corridors are painted in pale green and institutional gray, colors chosen specifically for their psychological neutrality, offering no comfort or stimulation. Guard stations are elevated and encased in reinforced glass, allowing officers to observe without being heard. This design creates a sense of perpetual surveillance. Even when you're not being watched, you feel like you are. And that feeling? That's the first step in breaking down an inmate's sense of self. Every day at Changi begins the same way. At exactly 6 a.m., the wake-up bell pierces through the cell blocks, a harsh, metallic clang that reverberates off concrete walls and jolts inmates from whatever restless sleep they manage to achieve. There's no snooze button. No gentle transition. Within 3 minutes, every inmate must be standing at attention beside their bed for the morning count. Guards move through the corridors with clipboards, marking off names and numbers, checking for any overnight incidents, self-harm, illness, or the rare attempted escape. The count is non-negotiable. If you're not standing, you're written up. 3 write-ups in a month, and you lose privileges, visitation rights, canteen access, even your allotted hour of outdoor time. After the count, inmates have exactly 15 minutes to use the toilet, wash their face in a small metal sink with cold water, and prepare for the day ahead. There are no mirrors in the cells. Singapore authorities believe they encourage vanity and distraction. So inmates go months, sometimes years, without seeing their own faces except in the blurred reflection of a polished metal tray. This erasure of identity is deliberate. You're not a person here. You're an inmate number. At 6:30 a.m. sharp, breakfast arrives. Not through a cafeteria line or communal dining hall, those are reserved for minimum security inmates. For the majority housed in medium and maximum security, meals come through a narrow slot in the cell door. The breakfast tray is always the same: a portion of white rice, a small serving of boiled vegetables, usually cabbage or kai lan, and occasionally a piece of steamed fish or a hard-boiled egg. The portions are calculated precisely by the Singapore Prison Service nutritionists to meet the minimum caloric requirements, approximately 2,100 calories per day for an adult male. But here's what the official reports don't tell you: the food is deliberately bland, almost tasteless. No salt. No seasoning. Nothing that might provide even a moment of sensory pleasure. This isn't accidental. Prison psychologists understand that taste is one of the few remaining comforts an inmate has, and by removing it, they remove another layer of humanity. Some inmates describe the rice as like eating wet cardboard. The vegetables are boiled until they're soft and colorless. The fish, when it appears, is steamed without any marinade or flavor. And yet, this meal becomes the focal point of the morning. Men eat slowly, savoring every bland bite, because it's the only event that breaks the monotony of the cell. Food in Changi isn't just nutrition, it's a control mechanism, and the inmates know it. The lack of flavor serves a dual purpose: it eliminates the pleasure of eating, turning meals into purely functional acts of survival, and it prevents food from becoming a currency or source of conflict. In Western prisons, inmates trade commissary items, chips, candy, instant noodles, creating underground economies that lead to debt, violence, and gang control. Singapore eliminates this entirely. There is no commissary for general population inmates. No snacks. No contraband food items. What you're given is what you eat, and if you refuse, you simply go hungry until the next meal. But the psychological impact runs deeper. Former inmates report that after months of eating flavorless food, their sense of taste actually dulls. Foods they once loved become forgotten memories. Some describe leaving Changi and being unable to enjoy a proper meal for weeks because their palates have been reconditioned to expect nothing. This sensory deprivation extends beyond taste. It's about teaching inmates that they are powerless over even the most basic human experiences. You can't choose what you eat. You can't choose when you eat. And you certainly can't choose to enjoy it. By 7 a.m., breakfast trays are collected, and the real structure of the day begins. Work assignments are mandatory for all able-bodied inmates. Singapore believes idleness breeds trouble, so every inmate is assigned a job: laundry duty, kitchen work, cleaning details, or manufacturing tasks. The most common assignment is the prison workshop, where inmates assemble products for Singaporean companies under a labor program that pays them roughly 50 cents per day. Yes, you read that right. 50 cents. For 8 hours of manual labor. The work is repetitive and mind-numbing: folding cardboard boxes, assembling small plastic components, sorting recycled materials. Guards oversee every workshop, positioned in elevated stations where they can observe without interaction. Talking during work is prohibited. Whistling, humming, or any form of self-expression is grounds for disciplinary action. The silence in these workshops is oppressive, 50 men working side by side without a single word exchanged, only the sound of machinery and shuffling materials. This enforced silence serves a purpose: it prevents the formation of alliances, eliminates plotting opportunities, and deepens the psychological isolation that defines life in Changi. But here's what the guards don't see, or perhaps choose to ignore. Despite the surveillance, despite the rules, despite the brutal efficiency of the system, inmates have created their own social structure. It's invisible to outsiders, communicated through gestures, eye contact, and the smallest of actions. In Changi, the hierarchy isn't based on violence or gang affiliation like in American prisons. It's based on time served, offense type, and most importantly, composure. The men who maintain emotional control, who never crack under pressure, who serve their sentences without complaint, these are the respected inmates. They're the ones newer prisoners look to for guidance on surviving the system. Then there are the informants, the snitches, who trade information to guards in exchange for minor privileges. These men are marked. Not through physical violence, which would bring immediate lockdown and punishment, but through social exclusion. Their food trays are left untouched near them. Their bunks are given the widest possible berth. They exist in a prison within the prison, isolated even among the isolated. And at the bottom of this invisible hierarchy are the child offenders and sexual criminals. In Changi, as in prisons worldwide, these inmates are the untouchables. At precisely 12 p.m., lunch arrives with the same mechanical efficiency as breakfast. The meal is marginally larger: rice, a thin soup, more vegetables, and sometimes a small portion of chicken or pork. But calling it a lunch hour is misleading. Inmates have exactly 20 minutes to consume their meal before the trays are collected. This time restriction is another psychological tool. Eating quickly becomes a necessity, not a choice. There's no savoring, no social aspect, no conversation over food like humans have shared for millennia. You eat alone in your cell, standing or sitting on your concrete bed, shoveling bland rice into your mouth while staring at a gray wall. The soup, usually a watery broth with a few vegetable scraps, is served lukewarm, sometimes cold. Inmates have reported finding foreign objects in their food: small stones, insects, pieces of plastic from food processing equipment. Complaints go nowhere. When you're convicted in Singapore, you've forfeited the right to comfort, and that includes the expectation that your food will be prepared with care. Some inmates develop gastrointestinal problems from the prison diet, chronic constipation from lack of fiber, stomach ulcers from stress and poor nutrition. Medical treatment is available, but the wait times are long. After lunch, it's back to work. The afternoon shift runs from 12:30 p.m. to 5 p.m., with no breaks except for bathroom access, which is granted on a case-by-case basis and monitored. The afternoon is when the heat becomes unbearable. Singapore's tropical climate means temperatures inside the prison can exceed 32 degrees Celsius (90 degrees Fahrenheit), and the workshops, housed in concrete buildings with minimal ventilation, become sweltering boxes. Inmates sweat through their uniforms, which are only changed twice a week. The smell in these spaces is overwhelming: body odor, industrial adhesives, recycled materials, and the metallic tang of machinery. Some inmates faint from heat exhaustion. Others develop skin rashes from prolonged sweating in unwashed clothes. But the work continues. Production quotas must be met. The companies contracting with the prison expect results, and if an inmate fails to meet their daily quota, punishments follow: loss of outdoor time, reduction in already minimal pay, or transfer to a more difficult work assignment. The afternoon shift is where the psychological wear truly sets in. The combination of heat, silence, repetitive motion, and isolation creates a trance-like state that some inmates describe as losing time. Hours pass without memory of them. Between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m., inmates in general population are granted their single hour of outdoor time. But don't imagine a spacious yard with basketball courts or weight equipment. The exercise area is a concrete rectangle approximately 30 by 50 feet, surrounded by 20-foot walls topped with razor wire. The sky is visible, a small patch of blue or gray, but the walls block any view of the outside world. Up to 30 inmates share this space, walking in slow circles or doing bodyweight exercises, push-ups, squats, sit-ups. There's no equipment. No balls. No games. Just movement for movement's sake. This hour is sacred to inmates. It's the only time they're allowed out of their cells or work areas, the only time they breathe air that isn't recycled through industrial vents. But it's also a time of tension. With different security classifications, gang members, and personality types forced into close proximity, conflicts can erupt. Prison guards watch from elevated posts, ready to intervene at the first sign of trouble. Fights are rare, but when they happen, the consequences are severe: weeks in solitary confinement, loss of all privileges, and extension of sentences for violent infractions. During outdoor time, inmates have developed a sophisticated system of nonverbal communication. A nod means acknowledgement. A quick glance toward a specific corner indicates a message was left, usually a small piece of paper hidden in a crack or under a loose stone. Hand gestures, so subtle they're invisible to guards, convey basic information: warnings about upcoming shakedowns, news from the outside delivered during visitations, or simply solidarity, a reminder that you're not completely alone in here. The most fascinating aspect is how inmates pass information about guard schedules, policy changes, and even which officers are more lenient or more brutal. This intelligence network operates entirely through observation and memory. One inmate might notice that a particular guard always conducts cell inspections on Thursdays. Another might observe that a different officer accepts minor rule violations without writing reports. This information is shared through the silent code, helping inmates navigate the system with slightly better odds of avoiding punishment. Former inmates describe this communication system as essential to maintaining sanity. Humans are social creatures, and even in an environment designed to isolate, they find ways to connect. During outdoor time, inmates have developed a sophisticated system of nonverbal communication. A nod means acknowledgement. A quick glance toward a specific corner indicates a message was left, usually a small piece of paper hidden in a crack or under a loose stone. Hand gestures, so subtle they're invisible to guards, convey basic information: warnings about upcoming shakedowns, news from the outside delivered during visitations, or simply solidarity, a reminder that you're not completely alone in here. The most fascinating aspect is how inmates pass information about guard schedules, policy changes, and even which officers are more lenient or more brutal. This intelligence network operates entirely through observation and memory. One inmate might notice that a particular guard always conducts cell inspections on Thursdays. Another might observe that a different officer accepts minor rule violations without writing reports. This information is shared through the silent code, helping inmates navigate the system with slightly better odds of avoiding punishment. Former inmates describe this communication system as essential to maintaining sanity. Humans are social creatures, and even in an environment designed to isolate, they find ways to connect. Dinner arrives at 6 p.m., and it's the largest meal of the day, but that's not saying much. The portion includes rice, vegetables, a protein source, and occasionally a small piece of fruit. The fruit is significant. Inmates describe the rare appearance of an orange slice or apple wedge as an event worth celebrating. It's one of the few foods that carries natural flavor, a reminder of a world beyond these walls where food is meant to nourish both body and soul. But here's the cruel irony: the nutrition is adequate by clinical standards. Blood tests of Changi inmates show they're not malnourished. Their bodies receive sufficient calories, vitamins, and minerals to function. But the psychological malnourishment is profound. Food in the outside world is culture, celebration, comfort, and connection. Inside Changi, it's fuel, nothing more. This reduction of food to mere biological necessity is one of the most dehumanizing aspects of incarceration. Some inmates report that within 6 months, they stop even tasting their meals. They eat mechanically, chewing and swallowing without awareness, their minds elsewhere. Others become obsessed with food, spending hours mentally recreating favorite meals from their past, describing them in detail to cellmates through whispered conversations after lights out. At 7 p.m., the final lockdown begins. All inmates return to their cells for the night. The doors slam shut with a heavy metallic thud that echoes through the cell blocks, a sound that former inmates say haunts them long after release. From 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next morning, you're in that cell. 11 hours. In a space barely larger than a parking spot. With nothing but your thoughts and the occasional sounds of other inmates, coughing, shifting on concrete beds, or in the worst cases, crying. This is when the psychological weight of incarceration becomes crushing. During the day, there are distractions, work, meals, outdoor time, the routine itself. But at night, locked in that cell, there's nowhere to hide from reality. You're in prison. Your freedom is gone. Your family is outside these walls, living their lives without you. Time is passing, and you're frozen in this concrete box, aging without living. Some inmates develop severe depression during these evening hours. Others experience what psychologists call time distortion. Minutes feel like hours, hours feel like days. The mind, starved of stimulation, begins playing tricks. There's a phenomenon in Changi that guards unofficially call the third-month crash. It's the point when reality fully sets in for new inmates. The first month, you're still processing, adjusting to the routine, learning the rules, holding on to hope that this is temporary. The second month, you're surviving, finding your place in the hierarchy, developing coping mechanisms, counting down the days. But the third month? That's when the sheer scale of your sentence hits you. If you're serving 5 years, that's 1,825 days. If it's 10 years, that's 3,650 days of this exact routine. The same walls. The same food. The same silence. Inmates describe this realization as a physical sensation, a weight settling on their chest that never fully lifts. Some experience panic attacks. Others withdraw completely, refusing to speak even during the rare moments when conversation is permitted. The prison has mental health services, but they're limited. A psychologist visits once a week, seeing dozens of inmates in brief 15-minute sessions. Medications are available, antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, but they're distributed cautiously. Singapore's prison system views mental health treatment as a privilege, not a right, and access is granted only in cases of severe psychological distress. If you're still watching, you're learning what most people will never know about one of Asia's most secretive prisons. Subscribe right now because what comes next, the hidden punishments and the code inmates follow to survive, is even darker than what you've already seen. Don't miss it. Survival in Changi requires understanding the unspoken code, a set of rules that exist beneath the official regulations. Rule 1: Mind your own business. In Western prisons, curiosity about another inmate's crime is common. In Changi, asking questions is the fastest way to mark yourself as trouble. You don't ask what someone did to end up here. You don't ask about their family. You don't ask about their sentence. If someone chooses to share, you listen. Otherwise, silence is respect. Rule 2: Never show weakness. Crying, complaining, or expressing fear invites exploitation, not through violence, which is rare, but through psychological dominance. Inmates who break down become targets for manipulation by others seeking to establish control. Rule 3: Respect the hierarchy, but don't kiss up. The long-term inmates, the ones serving decades, have earned their position through endurance. You acknowledge them with a nod, you don't challenge them, but you also don't grovel. Dignity is one of the few possessions you have left. Rule 4: If you have a problem with someone, you handle it silently. No confrontations. No drama. If someone disrespects you, you remember it and wait for the perfect moment to even the score through subtle means. Despite Singapore's reputation for absolute control, contraband exists in Changi, though not in the way you might think. There are no drugs, no weapons, no cell phones. The security is too tight, the punishments too severe. Instead, the contraband economy revolves around information, writing materials, and food additives. A pen is worth its weight in gold because inmates are only given pencils, which wear down quickly. A single pen can be used to write letters, keep journals, or create artwork, one of the few creative outlets available. These pens are smuggled in by sympathetic guards or family members during visitations, hidden in clothing seams or body cavities. Information is another currency. Inmates who work in administrative areas sometimes overhear details about upcoming policy changes, guard shift rotations, or even rumors about other inmates. This information is traded carefully. And then there's the most valuable commodity, seasoning. A small packet of salt or pepper, smuggled from the kitchen work detail, can transform the bland prison meals into something almost edible. These packets are shared among trusted inmates, creating bonds of loyalty. The penalty for possession of contraband, even something as minor as salt, is harsh: solitary confinement, loss of privileges, and black marks on your record that affect parole considerations. Once a month, inmates are allowed a 20-minute visitation from approved family members. These sessions occur in a sterile room divided by thick plexiglass, with conversations conducted through telephones. There is no physical contact. No hugs. No hand-holding. Just the ghost-like image of someone you love, distorted through scratched plastic, their voice tinny and delayed through a cheap receiver. For many inmates, visitations are the cruelest part of incarceration. Seeing your children grow up through glass, watching their faces change, hearing about school and friends and a life you're not part of, is psychologically devastating. Some inmates request to stop visitations altogether because the emotional aftermath, the depression that follows for days after, is too painful to endure monthly. But refusing visitation also sends a message to your family, that you've given up, that you're lost to them. It's an impossible choice. The worst cases are the fathers who entered Changi when their children were toddlers and will leave when those children are adults. 20 years of development compressed into 240 20-minute phone calls through dirty glass. Some children stop coming after a few years. Others come faithfully every month, aging before their father's eyes while he remains frozen in time inside these walls. Healthcare in Changi exists, but it operates on a triage system that prioritizes life-threatening conditions and ignores nearly everything else. Dental problems, cavities, infections, broken teeth, are treated only when they become emergencies. Chronic pain from old injuries or prison labor is managed with over-the-counter painkillers and nothing more. Inmates report waiting weeks to see a doctor for serious issues, and when they finally do, appointments last less than 5 minutes. The medical staff is overworked and desensitized. They've seen thousands of inmates, and to them, you're just another number complaining about another ailment. The most disturbing aspect is the mental health crisis that simmers beneath the surface. Singapore's prison system doesn't acknowledge the psychological toll of long-term incarceration in the way Western systems are beginning to. PTSD, severe depression, and anxiety disorders are common among long-term inmates, but treatment is minimal. Medications are prescribed to keep inmates functional, able to work, able to follow orders, but not to genuinely heal psychological wounds. Former inmates describe leaving Changi with invisible scars that never heal, difficulty connecting with others, hypervigilance, insomnia, and an inability to function in unstructured environments after years of rigid routine. One aspect of Changi that haunts general population inmates is the proximity to death row. Singapore maintains capital punishment for drug trafficking, murder, and certain other serious crimes. The condemned are housed in a separate wing, but the same complex. Inmates in general population know they're walking the same grounds as men counting down their final days. Occasionally, word spreads through the silent communication network that an execution has occurred, usually early morning, before the general population awakens. The method is hanging, carried out in a chamber specifically designed for this purpose. Inmates never see it happen, but they know. There's a weight in the air on execution days, a collective awareness that life has been taken within these walls. For some, this proximity to death row serves as a sobering reminder of how much worse things could be. For others, particularly those serving life sentences, the line between their fate and that of the condemned seems thin. Both are entombed in concrete, both have lost their freedom, both are watching their lives drain away, one quickly, one slowly. The psychological impact of living in a facility that houses both punishment and death is profound and rarely discussed. Singapore's correctional philosophy includes rehabilitation, but the programs are limited and selective. Educational courses are available: basic literacy, secondary education equivalency, vocational training in fields like carpentry, electrical work, and computer skills. But access is restricted. Inmates must demonstrate good behavior over extended periods, and even then, slots are limited. The classes themselves are another exercise in control. You sit in rigid classroom settings, follow strict schedules, and complete assignments exactly as instructed. Creativity is discouraged. Independent thinking is viewed with suspicion. The goal isn't to create educated, empowered individuals, it's to create compliant workers who can slot back into society without causing problems. The vocational training programs are the most sought after because they offer a tangible skill that could lead to employment after release. But the irony isn't lost on inmates: you're learning skills in an environment that strips you of initiative and autonomy, then expected to use those skills in a competitive job market that discriminates against former convicts. The success rate of rehabilitation in Changi is difficult to measure because recidivism data is tightly controlled by the government. Official numbers claim low rates, but former inmates tell a different story. Unlike American or Latin American prisons, gang violence in Changi is surprisingly minimal, but gang presence is absolute. Singapore's main organized crime groups, Chinese triads, Malay gangs, Indian syndicates, all have members inside. But the prison's rigid control system prevents the open warfare seen in other countries. Instead, gang dynamics operate underground. Affiliations are communicated through subtle signals: the way you wear your uniform, specific tattoos, though tattoos are technically prohibited and must be hidden, or even how you arrange items in your cell during inspections. The gangs serve a dual purpose: protection and structure. For young inmates entering Changi without connections, aligning with a gang provides a support network, guidance on surviving the system, and deterrence against predatory inmates. But this protection comes at a cost. Gang loyalty is forever. Debts incurred inside must be repaid outside. Favors done for you in prison create obligations that follow you after release. The most dangerous aspect is that gang conflicts don't disappear, they're merely postponed. Two inmates from rival groups might coexist peacefully inside Changi, both knowing that attempting violence would result in years added to their sentences. But they remember. And when both are eventually released, old scores are settled. Parole in Singapore is not a right, it's a privilege granted at the discretion of authorities, and the criteria are opaque. Inmates serving sentences over 5 years become eligible for parole consideration after serving 2/3 of their sentence, but approval rates are low. The parole board examines behavior records, participation in rehabilitation programs, disciplinary history, and statements from prison staff. But there's a catch: the system is designed to be conservative. Singapore's government prioritizes public safety over individual redemption, meaning unless you have an absolutely spotless record and compelling evidence of transformation, parole is denied. Inmates describe parole hearings as devastating experiences. You prepare for months, gathering documentation, rehearsing statements, hoping that this might be your early exit. The hearing lasts 20 minutes. The board members are stone-faced, asking clinical questions about your remorse, your plans for reintegration, your support system outside. And then you wait. Weeks pass before the decision arrives. Most receive denials with vague justifications, insufficient demonstration of rehabilitation, or continued risk to public safety. The psychological toll of hope repeatedly crushed is immense. Some inmates stop applying for parole altogether, choosing to serve their full sentences rather than endure the emotional roller coaster of false hope. In an environment designed to isolate, human connection becomes both precious and dangerous. Friendships form despite the rules against fraternization. Cellmates, work partners, or inmates who share outdoor time develop bonds forged in shared suffering. These relationships are complicated, simultaneously genuine and transactional. You trust someone because you need to trust someone, because complete isolation would shatter your sanity. But you also know that person might inform on you to gain favor with guards, or that the friendship will end the moment one of you is transferred or released. Letters become lifelines. Inmates spend hours crafting messages to family, friends, or romantic partners on the outside. Every letter is read by prison censors, who redact anything deemed inappropriate, complaints about conditions, details about other inmates, or anything that might be coded communication. Some inmates develop elaborate codes to communicate forbidden information, hiding messages within seemingly innocent sentences. But the censors are experienced. Most attempts are caught, resulting in loss of letter-writing privileges. The saddest letters are the ones that never receive responses. Inmates write to family members who have moved on, friends who have forgotten them, or lovers who have found someone else. These unreturned letters accumulate in personal belongings, evidence of connections severed by time and distance. Religion becomes a survival mechanism for many inmates. Changi offers chaplaincy services for multiple faiths: Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, and religious services are among the few group activities permitted. For 1 hour each week, inmates can attend services in a communal chapel, sitting among others and experiencing something resembling normalcy. The appeal isn't always spiritual. For some, religious services are simply a break from the cell, a chance to be around other humans without the oppressive silence of work detail. For others, faith offers genuine comfort, a framework for making sense of suffering, a promise of redemption, or simply a reason to hope that life has meaning beyond these walls. Prison chaplains are often the only people who treat inmates as human beings rather than numbers. They listen without judgment, offer counsel without condemnation, and provide a connection to the outside world through their presence. But religion in prison is also a performance. Inmates know that religious participation looks good on parole applications and behavioral assessments. So chapel services fill with both the genuinely faithful and the strategically devout, creating an atmosphere that's part spiritual community, part survival theater. Occasionally, inmates are transferred between facilities or cell blocks, and these transfers are traumatic in unexpected ways. After months or years in one location, you've memorized every detail: the cracks in the walls, the sounds at specific times, the faces of guards and inmates. It's miserable, but it's familiar. A transfer means starting over. New cell. New neighbors. New guards with different temperaments and enforcement styles. New unspoken rules within the inmate hierarchy that you must learn quickly or risk conflict. The worst transfers are to higher security levels, punishment for disciplinary infractions or classification changes based on behavior assessments. Higher security means smaller cells, less outdoor time, more restrictions, and proximity to more violent or unstable inmates. It's a regression, a sign that you've failed to comply with the system, and the psychological impact is crushing. But transfers also offer something valuable: information. An inmate transferred from another facility brings news, changes in policy, updates from the outside world, or simply new conversation. In a place where information is currency, a transfer can temporarily elevate your status as you share what you know about other parts of the system. Still, most inmates dread transfers. The unknown is always worse than the familiar, even when the familiar is hell. As release dates approach, Changi offers a pre-release program designed to prepare inmates for reintegration. The program includes counseling on finding employment, managing finances, avoiding former criminal associates, and navigating a society that has changed during their incarceration. But the program is woefully inadequate for the reality awaiting them. Singapore's job market is competitive and unforgiving. Most employers won't hire former convicts, especially for positions requiring trust or responsibility. Housing is difficult to secure because landlords conduct background checks. Relationships have often deteriorated beyond repair, spouses have divorced, children have grown distant, friends have moved on. The counselors mean well, but they're offering advice based on idealized scenarios, not the harsh reality of being a marked person in a society that values reputation above all. Many inmates leave Changi with a mixture of excitement and terror. Freedom is within reach, but so is failure. The recidivism rate, though officially low, includes many who simply weren't caught for new crimes or who engaged in low-level offenses that didn't result in reincarceration. The support systems for former inmates are minimal. Government programs exist, but they're bureaucratic and limited. Most released inmates are left to navigate reintegration alone, carrying the invisible scars of years in Changi. Former Changi inmates describe the outside world as overwhelming. After years of rigid routine, choices become paralyzing. What to eat for breakfast? Where to go? How to spend unstructured time? The freedom they longed for feels like chaos. Many develop institutional syndrome, a psychological condition where individuals become so adapted to incarceration that they struggle to function independently. They miss the predictability of prison, knowing exactly what happens at every hour, having no decisions to make, existing without the burden of responsibility. Some former inmates describe experiencing panic attacks in open spaces or crowds after years in confined areas. Others struggle with insomnia because the silence of freedom is too loud compared to the familiar sounds of the cell block. Relationships are difficult to rebuild. Trust issues plague former inmates, both their inability to trust others and others' inability to trust them. The stigma of incarceration follows them everywhere: job applications, housing searches, social interactions. Singapore's society is unforgiving of criminal records. Despite having served their sentences, paid their debt to society, they're never truly free from judgment. The psychological scars, depression, anxiety, PTSD, often go untreated because mental health services are expensive and former inmates prioritize basic survival: food, shelter, employment. Many fall back into criminal activity not because they want to, but because legitimate options are so limited. Changi Prison represents humanity's attempt to balance punishment and rehabilitation, order and redemption. But what we've discovered in this deep examination is that the balance tips heavily toward control of bodies, minds, time, and identity. The food that sustains but never satisfies. The routine that structures but never liberates. The silence that protects but also isolates. Behind those walls are not just criminals serving sentences, but human beings navigating an existence designed to strip them of humanity while somehow expecting them to return to society whole. The efficiency of Singapore's justice system is undeniable, but efficiency in punishment raises uncomfortable questions. At what point does order become oppression? When does justice become mere vengeance? How do we measure the true cost of incarceration, not in budget reports or recidivism statistics, but in human souls reshaped by years of psychological erosion? Changi will continue operating with mechanical precision, processing thousands of inmates through its system, releasing them back into a world that has moved on without them. And we, on the outside, will continue our lives, perhaps more grateful for the freedoms we take for granted, perhaps more thoughtful about the invisible people living behind walls we'll never see. The truth about Changi isn't found in official reports or government statistics, it's found in the silence of that 6x10 cell, in the bland taste of institutional rice, in the weight of time passing without living. You've just learned what life is really like inside one of the world's most controlled prisons. If you want more deep investigations into the darkest corners of the prison system, subscribe now and help this channel grow. Click the next video to discover an even more brutal prison story you won't believe. This is the content other channels won't show you. Don't miss what's coming next.